was born in Angola. Life for me there was amazing. It was butterflies and rainbows. I live in a really great neighborhood. My mom was there, so was my dad. They both had really great jobs, and I could see a clear picture in my mind of how it was. Everyone was happy. I was happy. When I was about 7 years old, my mom took me and my brother to Luanda for the school holidays. When we came back, we heard that my dad had passed away. That was the last time we ever spoke about him. I did not know how to feel or how to accept that someone that great was no longer going to be there when I needed him. Sadness was never something that we spoke about. We just carried on. After my dad had passed away, bad things happened, and we did not talk about those times. But I remember that one day my mom got a phone call from someone. I'm not sure who, but soon we were on a bus to South Africa.
If I could go back in time, I would rather have stayed with my family, even if we had to face death together.
Whenever there is a decision for families to separate with their children intentionally, it's not a decision that is taken lightly, and it's a decision that's usually taken out of sheer desperation for the best interest of the child as the parent perceives it, in order to keep them safe in most cases.
And they always think that wherever they are going, they'll get settled and they'll be able to bring the child over to join them. They always think it will be easier than to bring the child over, because it's normally very difficult at that point to live with the child. So some families, you find that the parents left the child with the relatives with the hope that when they reach where they intend to go, they will then be able to have their children joined to them. But unfortunately, the processes are so complex and so difficult, and you find that it's never as easy as they expected it to be.
In South Africa, I was living with a family in Mitchell's Plain. I missed my mom every single day. It was strange. I had never slept anywhere before without my mom. It was very uncomfortable, but I just kept my feelings to myself. I knew that Mitchell's Plain was a dangerous place, and every day when I walked to school, I was worried that something might happen to me and I would never be able to see my mom ever again. I didn't have anyone to talk about those feelings I had. The family I lived with did the best they could, but I was so young, and seeing the love they gave to their children, I felt the missing in me. I would see how the parents' children would come fetch the children after school, and some kids would even ask me if I have parents. When I went to sleep, I would question if this was my life forever or it was just a nightmare. I stayed there for about a year while my brother was staying in Switzerland with my mom. She was pregnant with my sister. Switzerland sounds amazing, but can you imagine living there while your daughter is somewhere that you don't even know?
The first time I came across Neua's case was through a call from one of our Scalabrini priests that had received a call for help from the Sisters of Mercy out in Kailicha. They ran a shelter, and they had come across an unaccompanied child that needed assistance.
First, the nuns came. They came to the house to take me to see a social worker. Soon the social workers came and told me to pack my things because I was no longer going to be in the house. I was filled with joy. I just knew if I left that house, I would be one step closer to my mom.
The social workers did an initial investigation and realized that Neua was indeed in need of care and protection and therefore needed a placement.
When Neua was in South Africa, it was incredibly difficult for me. She stayed with another family and later she moved to Lauren's house.
Lauren's house is a special place of safety for unaccompanied migrant children and separated refugee children. It is a child and youth care center and is registered with the Department of Social Development.
As I walked into the house, my body was filled with fear. There were so many people. I felt so scared of judgment. Everyone was so loud and they had so much energy.
When Neua arrived in Lauren's house, she faced the challenge that everybody faces. You walk into a loud place with a lot of children, a lot of rules, a lot of people coming in and out, and you need to make sense of your life. It's a huge emotional challenge for anybody to walk into such a space and start being yourself and finding yourself. Neua made it very, very clear from the onset that she wanted to be with her mother, that she was missing her mother, that she was yearning for her mother. And we knew it would take a long time for us to realize that if we were to be successful.
Every day I would wake up and I would go ask the social worker if there was any information about my mom, and the answer would always be the same.
I knew this was going to be difficult because I knew that Neua's mother wasn't a citizen in Switzerland. I knew that Neua didn't have any legal status in South Africa, and that makes it very difficult. It's already difficult to reunify a child in South Africa, so there were compounding difficulties here.
Then I started losing faith in Lauren's house. Even though they were doing every possible thing they could, anger was building inside me. But I would not understand why. I knew that people in Lauren's house were not the reason of this and that no one was to blame.
The process of trying to bring her to Switzerland was very difficult. Even with the help of the Catholic missions and other organizations, we faced many challenges.
The reality is we know that we often don't have answers in terms of what will the future of this young person look like. We know we're going to struggle to get documentation for this child because there are currently no straight pathways for these children in the law. But the life of this young person continues nonetheless. So we work through a strength-based approach. What are this young person's strengths? How can we use them to build that confidence and use that then to allow the young person to connect to their emotions? They need to understand what is going on and express where their uncertainties are so that we can support them in those specific areas. Neua knew that we were doing everything we could, although it wasn't visible to her. But she needed to let out her frustration and say, "You're doing nothing," because that was her feeling.
At Lauren's house, I started going to therapy. At the time, I didn't even know what therapy was. I didn't grow up in a family where we spoke about our emotions, and I was so unfamiliar with mine. Living in Lauren's house was like a roller coaster. One day I would wake up and be so grateful for my life, but the next I would want to scream to the world to just listen to me for once. I used to cry at night and ask Jesus for help because I was desperate and in need of a mother's love. Every day I would open my eyes and I wish they stayed closed.
From a social service perspective, I knew that if we had to release Neua from the South African court system into the care of the mother would need to be found suitable for the care of Neua. So I contacted the international social services in Switzerland, requesting their assistance.
Obviously, the number one thing is to see that the child is being reunified with people who can actually look after the child, care for the child, and provide protection to the child.
The report submitted by the social workers to international social services confirmed the suitability of Mimosa's role as mother and her ability to provide care for her daughter. As with all decisions made by government institutions around the best interest of the child, my reaction usually is to be appalled, because they misunderstand what the best interest of a child is. The Swiss authority felt that because Lawrence House was doing such a wonderful job in providing care for Neua, and modern technology allowed to be in contact with people across physical boundaries, that was sufficient for Neua to lead a meaningful life. The additional reason that on the basis of which the application was declined by the Swiss Immigration Authority was that Neua's mom's flat was too small.
Despite seeking help from various organizations, the Swiss immigration would not change their minds. For Switzerland, everything boiled down to work and money. If there's not enough money, as a parent, there's no other solution.
We understand the rights of a state to have immigration rules and regulations. Every country needs to look out for the well-being of its citizen, but that we lose sight of what a humanitarian and rights-based approach is within that context. And looking at children is terrifically sad.
We need approaches that are child-centered. We need an approach that puts the best interest of the child at the forefront. And unfortunately, currently, that is missing. And I think that's why the processes are so long sometimes, because the processes are not so clear. Yes, circumstances differ, but still, because there's a child involved, I believe that we need to have clear and simplified processes that allows the child to be returned to their families as soon as possible.
I was now 16 years old, getting very worried that soon I might be too old to be reunited with my mom.
But I didn't give up. I focused on working and integrating into society. I worked very hard to improve my situation.
I think at some point we realized we were hitting a brick wall with the advice we were giving to Mimosa on what she could do. We felt that a different intervention, a more strategic, and if you want to call it aggressive approach, was needed from our side in supporting the reunification. At this point, Mom was driving the processes by running from one office to the next, showing how she was suitable for the reunification process. We realized we needed a more explicit strategy on why Neua had a right to be reunified, and that required the intervention of our legal team at the Scalabrini Center.
The Children's Rights Project has an agreement and is funded by DSD in order to look at all cases of foreign children who are placed in different CYCCs across Western Cape. Lawrence House is run by the Scalabrini Center, but of course all the cases of foreign children at Lawrence House have to come through Scalabrini, through the advocacy project or the Children's Rights Project. We decided to present the case to the bid panel in order to strengthen the case and look for support from partners.
So a bid panel, it's a multidisciplinary and preferably gender-balanced panel of experts on child protection, so different child protection actors from civil society, from government, and UN agencies like UNHCR and UNICEF. And the bid panel deliberates on cases of children at risk who have had a best interest determination done for them. As long as the parent has the right status and meets all the requirements of that country, this is a rights-based pathway. So they have actually a right to family reunification. Neusa's case is a really good example of an excellent case to be deliberated at the bid panel, because the partner in this situation, the Scalabrini Center, was hosting her in their child and youth care center, Lawrence House, and they brought Neusa's case to the panel to hear from the other panel members on essentially what more can we do for this child who's clearly very affected negatively by this prolonged separation with her biological mother, and for whom there really isn't a clear pathway to a durable solution in South Africa.
It is important to understand that a collaborative approach is key. And I think this is what worked very well in this case. We had Scalabrini Lawrence House providing care and being kind of the facilitator of what needed to happen. We had the UNHCR, International Social Services, coming and moving things at a level that we cannot access. And we had a mother that never gave up and played her role in getting her daughter back. And we had a young person who never gave up hope.
The rejection was overcome by the fact that she eventually acquired a different status in Switzerland, which gave her more rights for family reunification. And this was crucial. And it was also crucial to ensure that she was being advised properly, and if her expectations were being managed. And so this is really where the work of her lawyer and the UNHCR office in Switzerland was crucial.
We then had June holidays, and at the time we were practicing for the World Refugee Day dance. I remember this being a good distraction. After a workshop of a refugee day, the social worker called me into her office. She said to me, "Nelsa, you are going to your mom." And I honestly did not know how to feel at that moment. I was so emotional and overjoyed. I would not believe it. I was like the happiest person alive at that very moment. Even though I was happy to leave, it was hard to leave a place where I grew so much. On my way to the airport, I felt so grateful for the house. At the airport, we went in on the check-in counter. I wasn't really listening, but then I heard that we must wait, and I started seeing a lot of calls being made. Auntie Kate told me that they couldn't see a number on my passport.
The way it was printed, those numbers there at the bottom, they were kind of cut off, part of, you see, the printing. And the passport could not scan. Getting an Angolan passport is not easy. It takes a very long time. And we have a visa that is valid for only 2 months. I was really panicking, like, are we gonna go back to zero? And imagine how long is it even going to take to get a passport from Angola?
At that time, my heart had dropped. I felt numb. I was watching the time on my phone.
Remember, Neua has been exited from Lawrence House. So at that point, chasing the consulate, but also making plans of, if it fails, where is she going from the airport? Then the airline was very kind. They delayed the plane because I told them, okay, the embassy has agreed to issue a letter, but they need to type the letter. Remember, they are not English speaking.
I was the last person on the plane. It was my first time on the airplane. I felt like I was holding so many emotions in my throat. I just focused on taking deep breaths. I landed in Zurich and got lost in the airport. My mom was waiting at the arrivals area and wouldn't get through and go find me. People only spoke German, and I walked up and down. Then I saw my mom. I was shaking and I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how it was. I think it was the most emotional moment of my life.
point that Nusa reunified with her mother, almost half of her life had been spent without her mother. And she had a sibling she had never met, her other siblings who she didn't see grow up. So this is, even when all of your needs are taken care of, and all of her needs were taken care of at Lauren's house. So Scalabrini did an excellent job of attending to all of her developmental and educational needs, but nothing can replace being with your mom.
It's never a situation that children are just dropped off in South Africa because, there's better education opportunities. It's not like that. And I think we need the media to understand and change the narrative.
You cannot have assumption about people and their choices unless you have spoken and understood those people and those choices. We cannot have opinions about unaccompanied minors unless we have unaccompanied minors speaking and sharing their stories. Then we can be advising and commenting, but until we don't give space to those voices, we cannot have a judgment.
To anyone in my situation, allow yourself to feel your emotions, allow your feelings to flow, feel how you want to feel, and talk to people.